Good evening and welcome, everybody. I'm Councillor Daniel Allen. I'd like to welcome members and officers to this Cabinet meeting and also welcome anybody watching online. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to take attendance of officers attending virtually and to explain how proceedings will work.
Can I confirm the following officers joining remotely can hear us and we can hear them? Martin Lawrence.
Good evening. Yes, present. Thanks.
Are there any other officers in attendance remotely tonight that I haven't called out? Speaking. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. Voting. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions? I will now hand over to the chair.
Thank you very much. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Tamsin Thomas. I cannot see anybody else missing. Councillor Chris Hinchliffe. Congratulations to Councillor Chris Hinchliffe, who has been elected as MP for North East Hertfordshire, and as such will no longer be sitting as a cabinet member. Notifications of other business. There have been no other business notifications. Chair's announcements. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recordings will be available both on the council's YouTube channel as well as the council's ModGov site, along with the documents from this meeting. Members are reminded that this council has declared both a climate emergency and ecological emergency. These are serious decisions and mean that as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purpose of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. I have agreed to a change in the order of the published agenda. And agenda item 7 will now take place following agenda item 12, followed by agenda items 13, 14 and 15. It will make sense as we go along. Public participation. We have no public participation this evening. Number 5, items referred from other committees. There are 3 referrals from other committees. 5A, productivity plans. Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 2nd of July 2024. This will be considered with agenda item 6. 5B, the Waste Recycling and Street Cleansing Contract Award Part 2 will be considered with agenda item 14. And 5C, Waste Recycling and Street Cleansing Contract Award Part 1 will be considered with agenda item 15. Number 6, productivity plans. Can I invite Councillor Matt Barnes as Chair of Overview and Scrutiny to present the referral 5A supplementary document on this item?
Thank you. So the Scrutiny Committee considered this report last week, or the productivity plan last week. It's a requirement of the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, as it was called at that point. There were questions around whether we really need to do this given the upcoming election. The advice had been sought from the District Councils Network, who view it actually as an opportunity to state all of the good things that we've been doing as a council over the past few years and continue to do in the future. It was noted that it's more of a report than a plan, but the template of the questions suggested that is what they were looking for. In general, the committee supported what was there. There were some suggested improvements, particularly around some more statistics to support the improvements that have been made, and also flagging the limitations on fly tipping fines to increase fly tipping fines as a barrier to some of the things we might want to do. After a fairly clumsy handling of the recommendations, I think it's fair to say, we ultimately agreed to support the report and any changes that you may wish to make off the back of the discussions that were heard.
Thank you very much, Matt. Recommendation. Sorry, are there any questions for Councillor Barnes? No questions on that. I do appreciate the amount of work that Scrutiny put into that conversation. It was well debated. I would therefore ask that the recommendation to Cabinet is 2.1, approve the productivity plan attached at Appendix B for submission to DLUHC, the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. That's the one.
Change that. Change their names.
Although they did change their name this morning, yes. So we will amend that and have the correct name as we go through. I would also like to note that Overview and Scrutiny recommended a choice of 2.1 or 2.2 at their meeting on the 2nd of July. 2.1 is, as we're standing at the moment, approves the productivity plan attached to Appendix B for submission. Or 2.2 delegates to the leader of the council and managing director authority to agree any amendments required to the productivity plan as a result of discussions at either Overview and Scrutiny Committee and or Cabinet, and authority to submit the plan on behalf of the council. However, we haven't had any further comments from Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so I am inclined to go with 2.1. The recommendation, the Cabinet approves the productivity plan attached to Appendix B for submission. Would anybody like to comment? Councillor Albert.
Cheers. Thanks, Chair. I sat at the Herts County Council version of this, their resources panel only well, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was only yesterday. And they've produced a very similar document to this, and I think, and I made the comment, it looked remarkably like the North Herts version in some ways. I'm sure there is perhaps no coincidence there, but I think it is the right approach that we've adopted here. For the sake of the record, Chair, I will repeat one of the things I said yesterday, is that in looking at the letter that we got from the then government, which obviously looked at one of the areas that says, things that where they're talking about being wasteful, and they talk about EDI there. Don't actually say what EDI is. It is equality, diversity, and inclusion. It's a shame they didn't spell that out, but they clearly regard that as a wasteful activity, and I think that's shameful. And I'm glad that's one of the things that we've washed away, and we've actually specifically, I think, in this document in front of us, haven't actually covered that in any great detail. And I certainly hope our new government will take that on board. Another example of they talk about as wasteful activity is trade union facility time. And I think actually working with our trade union partners is hugely important. And again, I'm glad we haven't touched upon that. And I'm hoping that our new government will have a rather different attitude about working with trade unions than the previous one. So I support what's is in this paper. We'll obviously need to see what whether the new government will be, to what extent they're interested in these sort of productivity plans. But I think the approach that we've adopted so far to get something done, get it published, is right. So I very much support that recommendation, Chair, to 2.1 that we approve as set out in the paper.
Are you happy to propose that, Councillor Albert?
Yes, I'm happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Debenham.
Second.
Thank you very much. Is there any debate? Yes, of course.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. Firstly, for the record, I did not see anything the County Council produced. So if there are similarities, I'm not casting aspersions, but maybe ours was published first. And for the purposes of the recommendation, the department is now known as the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, so MHCLG. So that would need to be the amended wording in the recommendation.
Thank you. Right. In that case, may I ask that we go to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is the strategic planning matters. Those are pages 113 to 138 in your packs. The report identifies the latest position on our key planning and transport issues that are affecting the district. The recommendation is that the report on the strategic planning matters be noted. Any questions at all on the strategic planning matters? Councillor Albert.
Just I think it's on the town centre strategies, and it's one we've talked about sort of previously, and just sort of understanding that how we are, for example, linking the work of the town centre strategy with the work that obviously is going on well, alongside but separately around the Churchgate project in Hitchin. I'm sure there are probably other examples in our other towns as well, but obviously that one's particularly sort of springs to mind in actually making sure that the kind of the Churchgate vision we're developing actually sits well with the town centre strategies and vice versa.
I will pass that on.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. As you'll see from the report, there was a stakeholder workshop, one of many that happened last June. And whilst there is clearly a line between the role of the council as a developer and the role of the council as a local planning authority, I can confirm that the relevant stakeholders on behalf of the council are attending those, are aware of the work and are able to feed in, as are other bids, town centre managers, etc. Hopefully that addresses Councillor Albert's question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Amy Allen.
There we go. Given the potential new town councils, will the potential new town councils affect the town centre strategy at all?
I wouldn't think they were, because there's a lot of the councillors will have had an invite and will have an opportunity to feed in, and should the town council then be formed of new individuals, then clearly their views will be taken on board. It's really where it comes into the process, because from the report we're looking at kind of bringing something in the autumn to cabinet, then go out to consultation. So it's kind of where that gets formed in the process, but it's also an iterative thing. You know, as we'll come on soon to the master plans and others, we're talking potentially decades of development within the town centres going forward. So it has to be an iterative and ongoing process.
Anthony?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the benefit of anyone that might be watching at home and might be interested. So on Thursday night at full council, we've got a paper going forward to commence a community governance review. So assuming that is approved, we will be going out to consultation about the town, parish and community councils across the district. One of the options to be considered over the next 12 months is whether any new town councils might be created. If they are, that decision would be taken in 2025 for implementation in 2026 at the earliest. And therefore, any town councils probably would be a bit too late on the scene to influence what Mr. Fullstone has been talking about, but of course could become a valued delivery partner in due course, depending, of course, what is in those strategies. So. And of course, Royston Town Council, as an existing town council, can of course feed in at the moment.
And that was going to be my next question. Thank you very much. Right. The recommendation is the report on the strategic planning matters be noted. May I have a proposer, please? Councillor Amy Allen. Seconder, Councillor Ian Albert. Thank you. Is there any debate? No, I think we covered everything in the questions there. Okay. In that case, may we go to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Item number 9, the North Stevenage Strategic Master Plan Framework. This report asks Cabinet to positively recommend the approval of the Strategic Master Plan Framework for land to the north of Stevenage to full council. This site is allocated for development in the council's adopted local plan, site NS1, policy SP16. It's allocated as a strategic site for approximately 900 homes and supporting infrastructure. The policies of the local plan require the preparation of a master plan for this site. The master plan for this site has been produced by the applicant team, working with council officers and advisors. This has followed approved guidance and procedures. The draft master plan has been subject to public consultation. The master plan provides an appropriate framework for future planning and development of this strategic site. Do we have any questions on the Stevenage Master Plan framework? Councillor Albert.
It would be helpful just to maybe just formally for the record to understand what the kind of sort of responses that we've had as part of that public consultation. So we kind of get a flavour. We obviously haven't any public participation this evening, but it's certainly helpful to understand, I think, for, more publicly what the sort of key issues that were being raised by the public in any responses received.
Thank you, Councillor. A statement of community involvement has been published, not as part of the committee papers, but alongside it on our website. So there's a link to that in your papers where you can have the detail. But key issues raised, summarised from that, were largely around traffic impacts arising from the site. Some objections sort of to the general principle of the site, although obviously that decision's already been taken by the council through the adoption of the plan. Some comments around the boundary, in particularly between the proposed site here and Gravely, and some impacts on sort of ecology. Obviously, there's some ecology interest on the site, albeit that a lot of it is agricultural farmland at the moment. So ensuring that basically appropriate mitigations included for those.
Thank you. Can I ask a question on this as well? How have highways been regarding this, especially considering access?
So the County Council have participated as part of the council project team, both from the highways and transport side and also education. So effectively for all of these projects, and it's the same for the North Letchworth one we consider afterwards, the council effectively sets up a counterpart team to mirror that of the applicant team, so specialists on all those sorts of issues. They're content with the movement framework that's set out in this plan in terms of it providing adequate connections. Obviously, the detailed assessment in terms of traffic modelling and impacts comes as part of the planning application, which is the next step after the master plan.
Thank you very much. I can't see any further questions. The recommendation is the Strategic Master Plan Framework for North Stevenage attached to Appendix A is approved and adopted as a material planning consideration for relevant planning decisions relating to this site. Just to let members of the public know, this is an approval of the master plan. It is not a planning approval. This will go to planning. It is not being approved now by planning. This is just an approval of the master plan framework. Is a recommendation to council, my apologies, to approve the master plan framework. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Debenham, and a seconder, please. Councillor Bryant.
I second.
The debate. I would like to state, after Rachel Reeves's statement about the need for planning and the fact that our government are going to be aiming to bring in housing targets, we need to make sure that we get the local plan working. We need to make sure that we get houses being built in the places that have already been approved by the local plan within North Hertfordshire. So I'm definitely in favour of this. Councillor Winstanley.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. I think for these master plan sites, we really should be pushing for the highest level of sustainability in terms of energy efficiency, reliance on fossil fuels, and biodiversity net gain, whether that's swift boxes and wildlife, areas of meadow and things like that. I think we really should be trying to future-proof these sites for, because these sites can be around for, forever. So whatever is acceptable now, we've got to think long term.
Thank you very much. Okay. May we go to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 10 is land to the north of the Grange, LG1, Strategic Master Plan Framework. This report asks Cabinet to positively recommend the approval of the Strategic Master Plan Framework for land to the north of Letchworth Garden City to full council. This site is allocated for development in the council's adopted local plan, site LG1, policy SP15, as a strategic site for approximately 900 homes and supporting infrastructure. The policies of the local plan require the preparation of a master plan for this site. A master plan has been produced by the applicant team working with council officers and advisors. This has followed approved guidance and procedures. The draft master plan has been subject to public consultation. The master plan provides an appropriate framework for the future planning and development of this strategic site. I would like to state that I have been to a number of the public meetings about the master plan held by the Heritage Foundation, where members of the public were invited to see how they were looking to do this. I've not been involved in the development of the master plan at all, but did attend those meetings just in case anybody saw me there and wonders why I was there and here. I have had no influence in either. I've just been taking part as a ward councillor. Do we have any questions? Councillor Winstanley.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if this is for maybe for later down the line, but I just wondered if we could have any assurances regarding the cohesion of this or integration of this new site to the existing Grange estate, rather than it just being sort of bolted on, how we intend to, create it, integrate it into one effectively.
Certainly. As members are probably aware, this site kind of wraps around the top of the Grange estate in a bit of a U shape. So there are some challenging interactions, because obviously a lot of that are sort of basically back garden fences. But that said, both the master plan and some work the council's doing are sort of fully aimed at making sure there's that integration and cohesion. From the council's side, obviously we've got the Grange playing fields that kind of sit at that interface between the existing community and the planned new community. And there's a précis in the strategic planning matters report that we looked at earlier about a work stream that the council's now running on the Grange to come up with a sort of design vision for the future of that space, to make sure that that does really sort of act for everybody, and allows a space where, as you say, existing and new can co-reside, can enjoy leisure time, etc. And other than that, yes, making sure there's linkages through from the site, largely using existing connections, obviously where the Greenway comes through into the Grange estate, and other footpath connections.
Thank you. Councillor Debenham.
I just wondered whether there's been confirmation that there would be a school on the new site.
Yep, the master plan includes land for a reserve school site at the moment. So the county council's view is that in the long term, once all development in Letchworth that's planned from the local plan comes forward, there will ultimately be a need for a school, but it'll probably be a bit of a matter of time as they see how other schools fill up. But yeah, the provision is there that allows for a primary school on the site in line with the policy.
Thank you. My question is regarding access. Is there going to be main access from the new development through the existing estate?
The master plan includes access into the existing estate, but it also includes a new link going north out onto Norton Road. The master plan obviously sets the design framework for where that will be. The exact split as to sort of where traffic goes out the road will be sort of determined through more detailed stages, but certainly the intention is that the majority of vehicular traffic would exit to the north onto Norton Road.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, the recommendation is the strategic master plan framework for the land to the north of the Grange LG1 attached as Appendix A is approved and adopted as a material planning consideration for relevant planning decisions relating to the site. May I have a proposer, please? Councillor Debenham, and a seconder, Councillor Winstanley.
I'm more than happy to second.
We move on to the debate. I would echo what I said around the Stevenage development, the need for housing, the need for good housing. And personally, I would say that I think there has been very good interaction with the public so far as the creation of this master plan has gone. And yes, I will be voting in favour. Do we have any further debate? No. Okay, covered in the questions. May I please go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Item 11, the adoption of a new tenancy strategy. Councillor Dave Winstanley to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is the adoption of a new tenancy strategy. As the local housing authority, we're legally required to publish a tenancy strategy. And this is it. It's for the next 4 years. It sets out objectives that housing providers in the district must have regard to when they're forming their own policies. A caveat to that is that it's not cast iron, but it gives a basis on which we can challenge should we need to. It's updated to incorporate the latest evidence on housing needs. It also complements our wider housing strategy, which you'll know was adopted in March of this year. Some key points in the strategy, 8.2 of the report, it refers to 5.4 to 5.6 of the strategy, where a key ongoing expectation regarding affordable rents, that for 3-bed houses, affordable rents should be set to a maximum of 70% of market value, and larger homes, 4 beds and over, should be at social rent levels. The 70% is as opposed to the 80%, which is the general sort of affordable level. We're finding that where affordable rents are at 80%, there's a significant gap between that level and social rents, so still unaffordable to many. We expect affordable rents to be no higher than local housing allowance to ensure that it's truly affordable for all. There's also in there, there's a homeless prevention provision in there, fixed term tenancies, which is 5.11 of the report. The proposed tenancy strategy includes a guidance on the use of fixed term tenancies, which in practice are not actually very common, and measures to prevent homelessness, including vulnerable groups such as people fleeing domestic abuse. In addition, the proposed strategy provides up-to-date, detailed evidence in sections 3 and 4 about local housing market pressures, affordability and housing needs. That is the new housing tenancy strategy. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question, please. I'm looking at 7.4, table 1. This summarises the number of placements the council has made over the past 5 years for people for temporary accommodation. And I notice a lot of them are out of district. Can I ask how we are working to lower the number of people being placed out of district? Because this can have major effects on social groups, on schools if there's children involved, and on access to seeing children, family, etc. So may I ask how we're looking to lower the number of out of district placements, please?
Yeah, I don't have a concise answer to that, but I may defer to Joe if possible, or to Martin, who is online. If that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Winstanley. Thank you, Chair. I think that table's actually in the next item, Chair, on the temporary accommodation placement policy. So they are quite similar in name and they do cover the same people, but I think that's actually in the next report.
And I made a mistake. It happens. My apologies, and it gives you a chance to get ready for me to ask that question again in about 5 minutes' time. Are there any other questions regarding the tenancy strategy? Okay. In that case, may I have a proposer, please? Councillor Albert.
Happy to propose, and also perhaps just at this stage to the chair also to comment that I think it's welcome that we've got these kind of suite of documents that will cover both in the previous administration and obviously with these documents here in front of us. And I think obviously these are really important parts of the work that we do. I guess the one thing that we do need to make sure, I think, is I think ensuring probably that members more broadly have a good understanding of these things, and whether we need some kind of additional advice and briefing around that might be something, but as to something maybe to take away. But very happy to propose this, Chair. I think it's a really good really good strategy, and I very much welcome it.
Thank you very much. We move over to the debate. Would anybody like? A seconder, please. Councillor Bryan.
A second.
Now we move on to the debate. Councillor Allen.
Just a very short point from me. As someone who has waited in a one-bedroom flat with 2 children for the security of something like social housing and things like that, seeing this covering tenancies and more opportunities for people to have the security of housing and a home, and us looking after vulnerable people, I'm just really pleased to see it come to fruition. Just put it through here.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out the importance of 8.4, that legally registered providers must have regard to local authorities' tenancy strategies. I think that is really important, and I'm glad to see that is something that is very much front and centre. So I'm very happy about that. May we go to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Item 12, I might have given away slightly already. The adoption of a temporary accommodation placement policy for homeless households. Councillor Winstanley to present the report, please.
Thank you again, Chair. I don't think I'm going to answer your question in my spiel, but I will refer to it. So this is the adoption of a temporary accommodation placement policy for homeless households. So we have statutory responsibilities to secure accommodation, including temporary accommodation for specified groups of homeless households. And this policy sets out how and where accommodation will be secured, and includes provisions to ensure it's suitable in line with legislation. It's not statutory to have a policy, but it's definitely good practice. And it also provides transparency to our approach. Also, having it in place makes us more resilient to legal challenges, which are increasing. A key objectives of the policy are to provide, where suitable, accommodation within North Herts. Otherwise, to make out of area placements as near as possible to North Herts. And then for those out of area placements, for time to be minimized, the time spent in those to be minimized. 6.4 to 6.8, 3.2 lays out the numbers that we're talking about. 2,500 households currently registered to bid for affordable houses, with only 400 being let last year. 3.4, those owed homeless duty placed in settled temporary accommodation where there's no available placements will look to either hotels or other nightly paid arrangements. 6.4 to 6.8 of the policy lays out the priority group, of those qualifying for temporary accommodation. In some circumstances, it may be that a family should be placed out of the district for whatever those circumstances might be, which I won't go into. But yeah, as I say, it's not a statutory requirement to have this policy, but it is, definitely good practice. And that is the adoption of the temporary accommodation placement policy for homeless households. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions other than mine? Councillor Albert.
The paper suggests there aren't financial implications. There clearly must be some financial implications, because clearly this is something that is costing the council, and rightly we're adopting this as an important priority for the work that the team do, Joe Doggett, Martin Lawrence, and all the team do. But clearly there is an impact on costs here. It'd be good to understand either whether it's from Dave or from Joe or Ian around what are the sort of costs that we are spending around temporary placements at the moment, and indeed what income we're receiving at the moment from government. Because so clearly this is something that we are treating as a really important priority, but clearly it is very resource intensive work because of the really difficult circumstances some of our residents find themselves in.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. If I can pass that over to Joe. To Martin. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can kick off, Chair, thank you. We did think about that, Councillor Albert. The placement policy details a process to make a placement. So in a way, the financial implications will be the same because you're dealing with the same scenario. It's just, this was really to highlight how we do it and where people might go and what we'll do to get them back in the district and so on. So, but just by way of background, as you know, we've had extensive use of nightly paid accommodation since COVID, really, since the pandemic, March 2020. And we're probably looking at the best part of £1 million net cost in 4 years, to be honest. So this policy won't fix that, but there are other measures we're trying to introduce to reduce that ongoing cost. Hope that helps.
Thank you. And now I'll repeat my question, if I may, about out-of-district placements and what we are doing as a council to reduce the number of out-of-district placements that we have to make.
It's very much, Chair, a function of a lack of local options, and most of the out-of-area placements are single people. They're not families. The occasional family is placed out, but with any household, we seek to get them back into the district as soon as we can. People who are placed out of the districts are very much into adjacent areas. So there are transport links, and they are geographically closer sometimes than parts of our own district. So it's very much around the supply, the options for single homeless people. If we have a sustainable pathway in North Hertfordshire, we would not have to resort to as many placements outside of the district into our hotels, because that's where the key placements are, into hotels, wherever we can find them. We have some suppliers who offer reasonable rates and decent quality accommodation with kitchenettes and what have you on a nightly basis, who aren't located too far from the district. So we tend to lean towards them because they keep an eye on people as well. But we do recognise it's the same answer in a way to Councillor Albert's question. We need a proper functioning pathway in North Hertfordshire for single homeless people to cut out the use of hotels.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. In that case, the recommendation is the Cabinet approves the adoption of the proposed temporary accommodation placement policy. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Allen, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Bryant. Thank you. We move on to the debate. Councillor Albert.
Could I just maybe in the contribution and support the paper, obviously, but again, maybe if I could seek from perhaps officers some guidance, or indeed, obviously, from Councillor Winstanley about how we clearly, obviously, important that we communicate this to our residents, but also I think is really important that we communicate this to members and this suite of policies that we've got here. Members have a lot of questions and inquiries around this. We bother Martin and his team all too often, but I think it may be useful to actually do some sort of briefing around this. MIS, sure, putting in our weekly MIS paper, but I think actually a briefing around this whole suite of housing policies might be something we could have a think about.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, I definitely support that. I think it's a great idea. I'd be happy to be involved with that, definitely.
Thank you. I personally am very keen on 8.3, paragraph 6.4 to 6.8, which specifies the groups that are prioritised. I think that is very well placed, and I think it is very important to be considered. So thank you very much for having that there. If there's no further debate, may we please move on to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Right. Our next item is the Corporate Statement of Enforcement Policy. I'm going to refer to Jeanette on this, the recent draft audit, which is still to be finalised. So, Jeanette, may I pass this one over to you?
You want me to present it as well, or just that last bit?
Well, seeing as you're there.
Really quickly, hopefully the cover report is quite straightforward and explains that we've had obviously one of these policies for a number of years, and it's good practice to do so, and obviously in compliance with regulatory codes. The report sets out that we hopefully sets out at 8.6, it summarises the sort of the general cover part of the report where it's been updated, and also there's various appendices because this is a corporate enforcement document, and that covers all the things that the district council enforces. So it shows there which parts of the policy have been updated at 8.7. With a couple of redrafts for two of the areas concerned. Whilst I am asking you to approve the policy today, last week we had an audit on our houses in multiple occupation, and there's some draft recommendations. So obviously that audit hasn't been finalised yet, but there's something in there at this moment in time which we need to explore a bit more, which actually refers to updating the policy. So for that reason, I'm going to ask for an additional recommendation, Chair, which is to delegate to myself and yourself, sort of in consultation with you, to make any amendments required to the policy following the finalised HMO audit, if that's required. Happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you very much. As said, that was the executive summary. HMOs are something that come up on the doorstep a lot when we talk to our constituents. And I think it is very important that houses of multiple occupancy are considered further. So I thank you for making this amendment. Do we have any questions? Councillor Albert.
I guess the question is, could you give us a flavour or what was in the audit report around households and multiple occupation?
Can I be fair to the officers concerned? Because we only had the draft in last week when it was just literally came in on the Wednesday and Thursday. And I know I've had a quick look through it and the team, so Steve and Jasmine, haven't really had the opportunity to come back. So I'd rather they did, because I think, as with some of these things, without us getting a tit for tat, sometimes we don't always see eye to eye on all of the issues that come up in a draft. So I'm not saying that there won't be, but I'd rather not say until they've had their opportunity to have their say, if you like, if that's okay.
Yeah, is that okay with you, Councillor Albert?
Yes-ish. The reason why I say yes-ish is because I can remember in the last civic year being at a licensing committee where we had a report, and I think probably a lot of us on the licensing committee then perhaps didn't necessarily know that much about how we dealt with households of multiple occupation. And so therefore I do actually wonder whether there's some issues there that in relation to actually the licensing committee need to be involved with as well, and whether there are any changes of policy there that affect that part of the thing, not just the enforcement end of it. Obviously, without having seen the report, I don't know what I don't know, but certainly I think we were, as an authority, it was an area that. And this is not the fault of officers, let me say, that clearly that we probably didn't have a complete record of households of multiple occupation. You don't know what you don't know, and it is another really resource intensive piece of work actually for the officers concerned. So I sort of share those concerns that you mentioned, but I did wonder whether that's something that also that the licensing committee need to be involved in, depending whether it needs any kind of changes to our existing policies on that in the licensing area.
I'm more than happy to brief relevant exec members once it's been finalised, or indeed once the officers have had the opportunity, who are on the ground and able to actually look at what's been set out in the report, to brief outside of that. Obviously, you know that a finalised version goes to FAR, and I'm sure that will all filter through, because part of our action plans in terms of any of the audits that's included for legal and communities, they are incorporated as to, making sure that we react to any audits, because there's no point in having them unless we do. So that will come through the whole process, including being reported back to relevant exec members for licensing. Obviously, Councillor Winstanley will be able to pick that up at our next briefing as well. That's okay.
Thank you very much for that answer. Are there any other questions? No. In that case, the recommendation is that Cabinet approves 2.1, the amended policy at Appendix A, and 2.2 delegates to the Service Director, Legal and Community, in consultation with the leader, authority to make any amendments required to the policy following the finalised HMO audit. May I have a proposer, please? Councillor Albert.
Happy to propose, Chair.
And a seconder, Councillor Winstanley.
Happy to second.
Thank you. We move on to the debate. We have had questions that have gone through very well. I also found it very helpful. 8.6, the summary of the amendments, kind of explained things very well for everybody. So thank you very much for that. Anything else for debate? No. In that case, we'll go to the vote, please.
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Thank you for the vote there. Item 13 is exclusion of press and public. I propose that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 5 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act, as amended. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bryant. Thank you. May we go to the vote?
Yeah, that motion is carried.
Thank you. We're just going to wait for confirmation the meeting has moved into private session before we continue. Thank you. And welcome back, everybody watching. Item 15, Waste Recycling and Street Cleansing Contract Award, Part 1. Can I invite Councillor Matt Barnes as the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny to present the referral on this item, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks again to the officers and to Councillor Allen for their work on this and bringing it to our committee and the considerations that we had. I'll take the recommendations in turn again. On item recommendation 1, we satisfied that a robust process was followed in the selection of the bidder. There was an unresolved question around the depot, but I understand that the recommendation is likely to be revised in light of that this evening. On recommendation 2, we are happy to delegate the power to the relevant directors on this, given the urgent need to make a decision once the award is granted and the fact that the necessary budget allocations have already been made in that regard. On recommendation 3 with the project board, we noted there's a high level of risk associated with the various work items as detailed in Appendix 5, particularly around procurement of the vehicles and the caddies and the MRF contract, also around digital transformation, customer service setup, and resident engagement and member engagement too, and the readiness of residents for the adoption of these new services. So we're particularly interested in that as it evolves over the next 6 to 12 months during the mobilisation. We also sought clarification of the membership of the project board, and it was clarified that Councillor Albert would be joining that to represent the digital transformation aspects too. And we're keen that the role of the shadows is enhanced and that they're fully involved in observing the meetings as well, where possible. On recommendation 4, having regard for the legal advice, we are again happy to, on balance, in the majority, happy to recommend that the council does go ahead with this on the basis of the increased opportunities for recycling. More recyclable material is moving away from residual waste, and there's a transfer of soft plastics as well. There are measures in place for those with the greatest need. We are at a point in the contract mobilisation, or the award of the contract now, where going backwards would be of significantly greater risk than proceeding on the basis of the legal advice. And there is a significant financial benefit to this in terms of the council's revenue budget position versus retaining the 2-weekly cycle. So those are the reasons for the recommendations that we're putting forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barnes. Are there any questions for Councillor Barnes? No. I'd like to thank Councillor Barnes and Overview and Scrutiny for going through this. It is very much appreciated by Cabinet. Thank you very much. We then go on to the report. Councillor Amy Allen.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents Cabinet with the work which has gone into preparing the award of the waste recycling and street cleansing contract. North Herts Council are lead authority in our partnership with East Herts Council, and they considered a similar report at their executive meeting today. The agreed aim and principles of the shared service are based around delivering services which are both financially and environmentally sustainable, and therefore Cabinet agreed the service designs for the new waste recycling and street cleansing contract on the 12th of December 2023 on this basis. To this end, the contract has been built around collaborative working, encouraging bidders to work across boundary of a shared service designed for the greatest efficiencies, and there are both contract and financial risks should the councils not make the same decisions. Officers have completed an extensive competitive dialogue procurement and will be seeking a decision from Cabinet to award the contract to the preferred bidder on behalf of both councils. Although the preferred bidder has been determined for a robust procurement process, it is necessary to amend the first recommendation in the Part 1 report to the following. 2.1, that Cabinet agrees to award the waste recycling and street cleansing contract to the preferred bidder as identified in Part 2 of this report, contingent upon the imminent completion of the Letchworth Depot's lease assignment from the incumbent provider to the council. This report also seeks a delegation to the Chief Finance Officer on decision to capital fund vehicles. The preferred bidder will need to swiftly order vehicles once the necessary standstill period is complete for them to be available when needed at the start of the contract. This delegation is to prevent a delay in ordering vehicles and to make the most up-to-date assessment of the financial benefit to the council in relation to the vehicle procurement options. A new joint project board is proposed to oversee the mobilisation of the new contract, as the mobilisation will require input from the numerous corporate teams to ensure its success, in particular in relation to digital transformation, communication and customer service, and the mobilisation of new services. The report also contains information on developing plans for mobilisation, which will ensure the successful implementation of services and for which the Joint Mobilisation Project Board will provide oversight. This includes a work programme and a draft communications plan. Cabinet should note that during the procurement exercise, the new government, released draft guidance to support their proposals for simpler recycling linked to new legislation introduced by the Environment Act in response to the 2018 Resources and Waste Strategy. This guidance is yet to be officially published, but the legislation requires that councils have due regard for any guidance which Cabinet are asked to do now, as a publication date is unclear. Therefore, an additional recommendation should be considered by Cabinet to reconfirm the collection of residual waste on a free weekly basis, which was originally agreed in October 2022 and reconfirmed in the revised service design presented at Cabinet December 2023. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen. Are there any questions for Councillor Allen, please? Okay, I have a question regarding families that produce. The correct government wording is smelly waste. May I ask about how we would handle that on a 3-weekly cycle, please?
I'm just going to defer that to Chloe Hipwood. Thank you.
Members can note from the report and the attached appendix covering the waste and recycling policies that we have provision within our policies to offer either larger receptacles, or in the instance, for example, a family that required additional capacity for incontinence wear, we can provide fortnightly collections to those households to ensure that they, can manage the service changes effectively, because ultimately there will always be some exceptions that require different services. So we have that built into our policies.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Councillor Allen? Councillor Debenham.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Wonder if would the change in frequency have any effect on our carbon footprint?
So in answer to that, all of the bidders put forward slightly different service design and methodology for the collection of materials. So we'll be rebaselining essentially our carbon footprint. We do, of course, have a new service. So the fibre collections are more collection rounds, but we are, of course, then reducing the number of collection rounds by going 3 weekly with the mixed dry recycling and the residual waste collections. We do expect there to be routing efficiencies found from cross-boundary work, and therefore we're hoping that there'll be a mitigation essentially of any increase from the additional collections through both that cross-boundary working, the reduction in the other collections, and then of course the reduction in waste going to either landfill or energy from waste through increased recycling.
Thank you very much. Councillor Winstanley.
Yeah, can I just ask regarding the communications rollout of the new collection schedule and all the new collection, awareness for residents? Obviously, that's going to come an additional cost. Can I just ask how that the budgeting for that will be set and whether that will come before members?
The report contains a draft communications plan based on work that the officers have done to evolve and develop what it thinks at this stage will be required to deliver the service rollout. It is draft, and that will be considered by the Joint Mobilisation Project Board before coming forward to the budget setting processes and cycle.
Thank you, Councillor Albert.
I'm gonna very much support the recommendations of the paper. Can I just pick up something that I know that was discussed a bit at the overview and scrutiny meeting around the sort of communications strategy. I think the one thing there that, you know, something maybe that the board, the mobilisation board might want, you know, to take away, I think is one recognizing that there is an important sort of overlay of doing between the two councils of us, you know, communicating and actually having communications products that can be used across the authorities. I suspect there is also sort of a level of something that sits, I think, slightly below the comms plan that might be for things that are specifically North Herts or East Herts and so on, that because clearly the councils operate in some slightly different ways and have different organizational structures. You know, we have the kind of, I'm not sure whether North Herts have the same sort of things as community forums, or East Herts have the same things as community forums, and there'll be things there that we'll want to do. But I guess generally, obviously, that in there, we would need obviously perhaps to think a little more also how we engage with members of both councils, because I certainly see, and from my recall of the last time, the importance of actually having members of both councils really kind of on board and be able to communicate and have all the products and Q&As and things there that they can actually communicate with residents, because they are important influencers for change here, and actually making sure that, you know, that that can help us help our residents understand the changes that are coming along. So there may be some things that sort of sit underneath that comms plan that the new board might want to look at, that where there might be some slightly different things needed for each district council, as well as that overarching subset of overarching communications plan that we've got in front of us.
Thank you. In that case, the recommendations are 2.1. Cabinet agrees to award the waste recycling and street cleansing contract to the preferred. Right. We finished the questions. I now make the recommendations. We will then move on to the debate. The recommendation is that Cabinet 2.1 agrees to award the waste recycling and street cleansing contract to the preferred bidder as identified in Part 2 of this report, contingent upon the imminent completion of the Letchworth Depot's lease agreement from the incumbent provider to the council. 2.2 agrees to the delegation of powers to the Director of Resources and the Director of Place in consultation with the executive members for Finance and IT and Recycling and Waste Management to determine whether the council capital funds vehicles. 2.3 agrees to approve the formation of a joint mobilisation project board to include the executive members responsible for digital transformation, as well as the executive member covering waste recycling and street cleansing services for both East Herts and North Herts councils, to monitor the progress of the mobilisation of the waste recycling and street cleansing contract. 2.4 has regard for the draft statutory guidance in Appendix 6 and taking into account the matters set out in this Part 2 report and any Part 2 clarifications, reconfirms the decision on the 3 weekly collection frequency of residual waste collection made by Cabinet as per 7.5 and provides clear reasons for the decision. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Amy Allen. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Val Bryant. May I move on to the debate, please? Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I think it's really good that we can use need for a new waste contract to actually provide a service that's actually going to be needed by our residents. Things have changed in waste and recycling over the last few years. And by the time we start the new contract, we'll be in a different place when it comes to our bins and what we put in them, because there'll be more that we can recycle with the soft plastics. I think generally residents have got used to the situation and try hard to actually recycle as best that they can. And with that, we also can help the climate emergency and be more environmentally friendly. And I think the whole thing is very positive. Thank you.
Councillor Winstanley.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Val just said. The removal of the soft plastics from the purple landfill bin obviously massively reduces the need for a 2 weekly collection, other than those residents who have the greater need. The soft plastics make up a huge proportion of what's in the purple landfill bin. And what I'd love to see is supermarkets and industry reducing the amount of soft plastics they pump into our houses. We don't tend to have a choice on what, what we consume is packaged. But the fact that it can be reduced and it can be recycled in future is very, very positive in my mind.
Thank you. As we look through the documents and look at 8.32, the reasonings behind the 3 weekly service design, it's worth considering the service design is nearly ready to be implemented, and having to redesign the provision of the services would cause significant disruption and would be a waste of resources. We've considered options for fortnightly collections and decided that the service design represents a better approach. It will increase recycling. And at the beginning of every meeting, I point out that this council has declared an environment and an ecological emergency. And that has to be first and foremost as we go about our roles within the council. This will make a huge difference to all of our residents. And it won't necessarily be an easy way through to begin with, but they will get used to it very, very quickly. The council does have the opportunity to amend the service provision in the future if issues arise. And yes, there are financial reasons. We need to give value for money to our residents. This is the best way forward, in my opinion. I would definitely be voting in favour of it. Okay. That would appear to be the debate finished. May we please move on to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, everybody. I close this meeting at 9:16. Our next meeting is on the 10th of September. I look forward to seeing everybody at full council on Thursday. Thank you.